everybody, and I didn't burn down the mill either. My sister did, but now she's been eaten by wolves.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Midnight Mystery School. I'm Decker, the Phantom Astronaut. And today we are talking a little bit about Aubrey Plaza, an actress known for roles ranging from things like Parks and Rec to Scott Pilgrim. She was recently on the Marvel TV show Agatha All Along, playing a witch who was also deaf. This morning, the news was reported that her husband of several years, I think they were together since maybe 2011, 2010, but they were married more recently during COVID, passed away under sudden and mysterious circumstances. So why am I, again, indulging in gossip, drama, that sort of post when this is predominantly a channel focused on storytelling, and travel and media dissection and folklore and, all of that kind of good supernatural stuff? Well, unfortunately, there's an intersection here. So Aubrey Plaza, who, like I just mentioned, was most recently in the Disney Plus show Agatha All Along, playing a green witch and deaf, has a long history of associating herself with at least the iconography of witchcraft. So she put out a children's book, I think it was The Christmas Witch, a couple of years ago, went on a big press tour where, she was wearing the stereotypical Salem hat, the whole thing. Throughout her career, she, has made allusions to the supernatural. In her husband's film, The Little Hours, she played a nun who was also a witch, who was wrapping the other nuns up, Kate Micucci and some other people, into her coven in the woods. And, it was done in a comedic way. A lot of this stuff is done in a comedic way for her, but there is a strong public perception between Aubrey Plaza and witchcraft or the dark arts, that sort of thing. In addition to that, she, on Parks and Rec, did a kind of character within a character that was a femme fatale trope, right? And the joke was that she had killed her husband for the money and so on and so forth. And it was sort of a 1930s sort of suspiciously rich widow character. And so, I'm not the kind of person who points this out and says that karma plays a role in this. It definitely does not. This is a tragedy. This is a horrible thing to have been experienced by her. But I'm more interested in how the public conversation is going to be crafted around this. There are a lot of people that believe that everyone in Hollywood is somehow associated with the occult or is a criminal, is a ne'er-do-well. I see the comments online at Be California is, just a crazy psychotic killer who is, one tiny step away from bringing down all of Western civilization and, this sort of religiously conservative Christendom that many on the right are trying to create in the public perception of being, what is a real American, what isn't a real American. So there's probably going to be conspiracy theories that are going to surface around Aubrey Plaza and witchcraft, satanic rituals, sacrifice of her husband, whatever you want to imagine will probably be said about this incident. It's unfortunate because it's a terrible tragedy for a family, especially a relationship, to endure. So why is that really going to be lighting this match in a powder keg? Well, because there's a long history of this trope of the Black Widow. And usually the Black Widow is more associated with a woman who is doing something with the motive of money. I'm not sure what their financial situation was, but I know that Aubrey is the more famous of the two, despite her husband being a very successful director. Worked with David O. Russell, who himself has some stories of being cantankerous and difficult to work with. He wrote the film I Heart Huckabees for David. So typically this Black Widow trope is, a woman who is killing her husband for one of two reasons. It's either going to be for money or because the husband was somehow abusive and she wants to just be rid of the marriage. And some of that is rooted in the idea of Catholics traditionally not believing in divorce and these women feeling trapped, especially in arranged marriages or marriages of economic imbalance or power imbalance. And there's some element of abuse, and there's not really a lot of love to begin with to build that foundation. And this goes all the way back to Rome, which I'll get to in a minute. And essentially what you end up with are stories that have become popular in the media imagination, like Belle Gunness or Hell's Bell, who in Chicago in the late 1800s to 1900s was considered really one of the earlier recorded serial killers. And it's especially interesting because she was a woman. And these stories kind of cement themselves, and they then morph over time because you take this idea of female killers that were very popular in the very, very early decades of the 20th century, and you can extrapolate out from that things like the musical Chicago, all about the jazz killers and women killing their husbands and things like that. You can extrapolate out from that the entire noir trope of the femme fatale, which was not only popular in cinema, but also in pulp magazines and in comic strips. If you ever saw Will Eisner's The Spirit comic, that's very steeped in the tradition of the femme fatale. And all these things that were happening in the early 20th century harken back even further to this incident in the 1650s in Rome, where 5 women were hung for killing their husbands. These were sort of the first popular Black Widows that we know of. I don't want to say the ringleader, but the person who was supplying the poison for them to slowly kill their husbands was Geronima Spana. And she was selling this type of poison called aqua tofana, which was odorless, it was slow to kill, and there is a recipe for it that I believe was recovered in Italy. Maybe it was in the Vatican. I have to research it further, but I know that they did unearth the recipe for it. And the news of this ring of women killing their husbands, and then this extends all the way out from Italy into other areas of Europe, like France, where there was a conspiracy of poisoning believed to be aqua tofana. And then even Mozart, the composer Mozart, when he was passing away, made claims that he had been poisoned by aqua tofana. So the case of these women in Italy that had been killing men became really big news. It spread like a meme in sort of the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries. Now, all of that kind of comes into play because of the very public nature of this death and the conspiracies that are built around this in the modern era. You have real life, again, tragic events like the death of Brittany Murphy about a decade ago, maybe a little more. And her husband at the time had been looked at very suspiciously because of, again, this imbalance in their relationship, this perceived imbalance in their relationship in terms of her being maybe more popularly attractive. She was a fairly attractive, popular actress, and he was an average guy. It was a dude, and I'm sure they loved each other very much. They seemed to have loved each other very much, but the public wanted to believe that maybe she was having affairs or something because he was not perceived to be as attractive as her. And then when she died mysteriously, there was an eye that was cast upon him that was very negative. This sort of eye that was cast upon him as maybe being a ne'er-do-well. So You look at that, you look at movies like Gone Girl, again, a powerful person in this fictional work is believed to have killed somebody, a power imbalance, whatever power that may be. In the case of Gone Girl, it's political power, money, and influence. In the real life case of Brittany Murphy, it was this perceived generic scale of attractiveness. These conspiracy theories tend to take root when a public figure is involved in sudden death. And sudden death on a personal level, we look at it as a very tragic thing. We look at sudden death in our society as going, oh no, what could possibly have gone wrong? And we immediately, going through those stages of grief, start to build narratives about why this might have happened. They involve the supernatural. They involve things like karma. Sometimes they are more grounded in malice and criminality. And oftentimes, none of these things are the case. Life is just unpredictable. And sometimes we have to deal with this in our own way. When you have more time to prepare for death, and if you have the opportunity, click on the link here on the Phantom Astronaut channel, listen to the full podcast for death doulas. And I interview people about the grief process and what that's looked like for people. Take a look at that, and maybe you can start to understand what people go through when they experience this on a personal level. On a societal level, we also experience this disconnect between sudden death and what we expect, which is sort of a old end of life experience where people, just sort of age up and pass away, or if there is a period of extended illness. But sudden death can be both expected and unexpected. When it's an elderly person who dies suddenly, we go, oh, okay, well, obviously they were, reaching the end of their lifespan. If it's a younger person, like in my family, my father had a cousin named Gary. He was addicted to drugs, came back from Vietnam. It's very self-destructive. And unfortunately, his battle with addiction ended up in his death. So from what I know, from what I've been told, because I don't have firsthand experience with this, and it's not something that's regularly talked about in my family, but from what I'm told, he had become addicted to heroin, and he fell asleep in the winter outside in New York City and shot up, passed away from hypothermia. So that was a sudden death, and it was also an unexpected death. Most people who had come to grips with his addiction recognized it as a tragic thing that had happened. His mother, my father's aunt, she had an experience that led to maybe what we could consider a psychotic episode. There was a little bit of a break with reality. She was never quite the same because she couldn't reconcile the sudden death. Now, on a societal level, we look at sudden death and we go, wow, that person was so young, or they seemed so happy, or whatever it might be. But most death is sudden death, and we don't regularly recognize that. We don't look out into the world and say most people die in a sudden and tragic way, but it is a tragedy when anybody passes away. It can be a heart attack. It can be a car accident. There's a person I know, his name is Joe. He was driving from an appointment, and somebody was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Joe hit him with a car, and that person passed away. So these tragedies happen all the time, all around us. There are a lot of people that I know. Another guy, a young guy that I used to know, his name was Ty. About 10, 15 years ago, he was probably a drug addict. I know that he was a drug user, and he liked to party. He was one of these people that, you couldn't dissuade him from, doing cocaine, stuff like that. And, you get the call, hey, look, he died of an overdose. And it's tragic. But at the same time, this is how most people go. They go suddenly and surprisingly and in ways you never expect. This is why videos here on YouTube of industrial accidents and things like that are so popular. Cave diving tragedies. If you ever seen any of these videos on here where the narrator talks about like this accident in this cave and, this industrial accident on this oil rig or, people caught in this fire or whatever, they have lots of views, hundreds of thousands of views on them because people are fascinated by the idea of sudden death. But most of us are going to end our natural lives in a way that is sudden. So why do so many sudden deaths cause us in our society to look at people in a negative way? Like I hope that this doesn't happen to Aubrey Plaza, but I'm afraid that there already is an idea floating around, a meme, a trope, whatever you want to call it, that women kill and they kill their spouses. And you hear this all the time in the rhetoric from like red pill communities where they're talking about things like, this woman is doing this to hurt me. This woman is doing this to punish me. And it's very pervasive in our society. When you combine that with this distrust of actors and people in media, it kind of becomes the perfect storm for a witch hunt. Especially, where somebody like Aubrey, who associates herself with magic and superstition and all these sorts of esoteric things within her persona, is the central focal point of a tragedy like this. So ultimately, my heart goes out to her, her family, her husband's family, everybody who's involved in that tragedy. Check out some links in the description for more in-depth information about historical instances of Black widows, why people do this, why they don't. We may be seeing more of this sort of thing going into this new year and this new administration, especially if there's more crackdown on things like divorce. There's a big push on the right wing right now to make no-fault divorce illegal, to roll that back across many of the states. Well, when you roll that back, you are actually going to end up with Black widow killings. When you roll back things like access to reproductive health care and abortions, you're going to end up with more Black widow killings. So some of those fears that those types of dudes who say this stuff, some of them are warranted if they want to try to control people. But what's going to happen is the public is going to reposition those real and valid concerns about why women kill husbands, and they're going to focus them into people in the arts and people who are not Christian and open about it, and they're going to wrap that up into a fervor. So it's not like, it's like a little shell game. It's like, look over here, not over here. And I hope that doesn't happen with this. I hope that there's just an outpouring of affection for this wonderful performer and everybody associated with her and her projects. But I think that as the next years go on, even though her case is one of tragedy, we are probably going to see an influx of more political based, or not necessarily political based, but deaths that are influenced by the political environment in which we live. And it's going to create some very, very interesting folklore that circles some very, very tragic events. Anyway, my name is Decker. I'm the Phantom Astronaut. You're watching Phantom Astronaut's Midnight Mystery School. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. There's plenty of ways to support the channel in the links, and I will see you out there.